And welcome to the Ramp Up to Retirement podcast with your host, Dan Reese. Good to be back with you again.
Yeah, this is a great topic today. A lot of people have questions about it. And so I'm excited to get into it.
I'm really, really excited to get into it. And as I mentioned to you right before we started recording this, anybody out here in the listening audience who's within sniffing age of 60 is already being bombarded with free lunches or free dinners or, free seminars about when to take Social Security, how to take Social Security. And, not to burst anybody's bubbles here, but Dan, I'm sure you'll reinforce this. The real answer is a lot harder than the answer you're probably going to get over some bad food at a free banquet.
I think of the old days, like the stories of the circus where they had the guys selling the magic elixir, and it's
exactly.
We're going to give you
Exactly.
This is it. Like if everybody just does it this way, everything's going to be great. Right. And you're right. That's not even close to accurate.
So fit this into you teased this last time, but fit this into the universal theme of what you talk about all of the time. And by that, I mean the 3-lane highway and how Social Security works within all of that.
Yeah. And I mean, really, so our 3 lanes, just to review, number 1 is investment management and kind of handling those investments. Number 2 is retirement planning and financial planning overall. And then the third is estate planning and taxes and things like that, right? So one of the things that, we always talk about is people want to know, when should I take Social Security?
Oh, yeah.
And so, the reality is that we love to make decisions in a box because it's simpler. Because it's like, okay, yeah, this guy or this girl is saying we should do it at this time because of that and this and that. And the reality is like when you do true planning and investment management, it affects all 3 of these lanes. It affects taxes. It affects your investments. It affects your retirement income plan, right? And so it's really important as we get into this stuff that just start looking at all these decisions more holistically. That would be my biggest advice. Think of this across all 3 of those lanes. If I do this, what is the effect on all 3 lanes, not just the single topic that you're talking about? So, as we go through this stuff, just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And as we start to go through this, I can't think of a better place to start than with the question of why this year, why 2026 is different, Dan.
Yeah. Yeah. So like back in 1983, so let's do a little Social Security history. So when Social Security was created way, way back, and I don't have the exact year, I think it was like 30s. It was around the Great Depression. And, people often worked in very labor intensive jobs where they get to a certain age and they really couldn't work, like physically could not do those jobs anymore. And so back then, Social Security started at 62. That was when your benefit was basically payable. And most people don't realize life expectancy back then was like 59 or 59 and a half or somewhere in that range. So it was like, oh, this is great.
Wow.
The average person won't ever even see it, right? Obviously, things have changed dramatically since then. So one of the things they realized in the early 80s was that, hey, we have a little bit of a financing issue, which still exists today. But one of the ways they figured out they could help with that was they said, hey, people are living longer, so we should be adjusting full retirement age to higher numbers. Now, what is full retirement age? What that means is where you get your full benefit, not a reduced benefit. So we still are able to get it at 62. And in certain cases, if you've lost a spouse, even at 60 sometimes. But the reality is that with 62, you're taking it's less money, right? Your full retirement age is the full amount. And then there's even some other things we'll talk about later. But so they gradually started phasing that in. And so basically, it was based on the year you were born. Well, we finally have gotten, so it started, like people born before 1937, full retirement age was 65. And so that would be my parents. And then you get each year it went up a couple months at a time. Then it got to 66, depending on when you were born. And now we're all the way to age 67 for your full retirement age, which at this point is everybody moving forward. So if you're born in 1960 or later, 1960s year that those people are turning 67, obviously this year. And so it'll all be the same regardless what year you're born from now on.
Oh, and that affects everybody, even people already on benefits.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like once you're on benefits, you're on benefits. So like the change doesn't really have much effect. You know what I mean? So like, so once you started benefits, whatever applied to you applied.
Is what you live with.
Yeah. So like, let's say, for example, you were born in 1960. We already knew your full retirement age was 67. So if you started at 62, they made the appropriate adjustment to determine how much you were going to get if you started at 62. So
that's interesting. Is there anything else that changed alongside the retirement age in 2026 or the full retirement age?
Yeah, it's really good to understand. So Social Security, like a lot of like things to do with the IRS, to do with government benefits, like all those things generally have like adjustments each year, right? So as an example, Social Security has cost of living adjustment. Some people just call it COLA. You'll usually see, I think around October or so, hey, the expected cost of living increase for Social Security is X, for this coming year, which starts in January when you get your payments. So like this year, the increase was 2.8% was the cost of living increase. So that was the change for this year. The other thing that changes, which I think people may be somewhat familiar with, but this goes into the complexity of Social Security and how it applies to the 3-lane highway. If you are under full retirement age, so let's say it's 67 for you, and you were to turn it on earlier than that, there's something called an earnings limit, which means if you earn a certain amount of money, this year it's $24,480, then they will start withholding additional Social Security. Now, you don't lose that. It's factored back in later on. But as far as your paycheck currently, that can reduce that benefit. And then it's higher. It's $65,000 roughly if it's the year you turn full retirement age. And so there's a lot of complexity in those numbers, but those are things that change. And then the other thing that changes, honestly, and you'll hear a lot of talk about this right now, is what's called your taxable wage base. So what that is that you are not charged Social Security tax on all income. Most people are, but basically this year you're charged up to $184,500. So if somebody made income above $184,500, and you look at that thing that everybody hates on their paycheck called FICA, which is Social Security and Medicare and things, the Social Security portion will stop being withheld once you exceed that amount of income, which is something that adjusts almost every year.
That's interesting. Okay, now let's get concrete because you've made allusions to this a couple of times already. There is a difference between claiming Social Security when you're 62 and waiting to full retirement or even beyond. So why don't you lay out some numbers and explain that difference to us?
Yeah. Number one, so like, again, everybody can start it at 62, regardless of when your full retirement age is, right? Typically at age 62, you're going to have a 30% reduction. It's significant over your full retirement amount, right? That is significant. 67 is your full amount, no reduction, no addition. And then you can wait all the way till 70, and you get about 24% more benefit at 70 than at 67. So like there are significant adjustments through the way. So I've got, actually, let me look at make sure I get these numbers correct. As an example, and I think this puts it into perspective because percentages are never that much fun. So like if your full retirement benefit was, say it was $2,400 a month, if you took it at 62, that would be about $1,680 would be about what you'd get per month. At 67, you'd get that amount, $2,400. And then if you waited till 70, it would be almost $3,000. So like $2,976, but almost $3,000 a month. So that is a significant range, right? You think about the low of 1670 or 1680 in this example and a high of 2976. I mean, that's significantly different monthly income from one option to the other. And so it's really important that those decisions are well thought out, right? As it applies to your own case.
Well, you know, while you're talking, Dan, there are people who talk about the break-even age.
Yeah.
What is that? Explain it, please.
Yeah, so this gets complicated, and I will say this is where it's not as easy of math as what people think, but to give you just the summary, typically, no matter when you start it, your break even is anywhere from 78 to 82. And so life expectancy, if you get to 65 today, for a woman's almost 90 and for a man's like 85. So for most people of average health, when they get to that age, and you're making these types of decisions, most people are going to actually live longer than those numbers. So like the break even, actually, most people are going to, if they delay, are going to win, meaning that they're going to get more money. So the break even really has to do with, hey, if I take it earlier versus later, how long do I have to live to make up the money I would have received, right, if I started earlier? So like if I'm getting a paycheck from 62 to 67, those 5 years, and I added up that money, because we know if we wait, we're going to get a higher monthly income. How long do we have to wait? So that's kind of a high level. The thing that people often miss is how cost of living adjustment, that COLA, affects it. Because cost of living is a percentage, it's not a dollar amount. And so the higher your benefit is to begin with, the higher your raises are each year. Does that kind of make sense?
That makes total sense.
So I just did a simple example. I said, if we had a $36,000 a year benefit, so like that $3,000 a month roughly, and like this year it was 2.8%, you would have received a $1,000 raise, $1,008, which is about $84 a month, right? If you would have taken it earlier and you had that $20,400 benefit, right, then your raise would only been $47 a month $47 a month instead of 84. So when you start factoring that in with compounding, you start getting this spread because your raise is bigger every year and it continues to get bigger because of compounding and things. And so break evens are, a lot of people will do the math wrong because they want to justify taking it right away at 62. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't take it at 62, but what I'm saying is that the math isn't quite as simple as adding up your benefit there versus, the later one. And the other thing you'll notice, if you have gotten your statement regularly, cost of living, you'll see that your benefit actually adjusts over time. So if I looked at it 3 years ago and it was $2,400 a month, it might be $2,500 now instead because of cost of living and things have changed over time. So there's a lot of moving parts that you have to be aware of.
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts. First thing I want to tell people is if they don't know, they can go to ssa.gov.
Yep.
And they can create an account and sign in and see what their benefits might be. And I would encourage people to do that. The other thing I would really encourage people to do, and it should be obvious from the conversation so far, there is not a really good single good answer. Everybody's answer is different. And to underscore that, Dan, are there situations where, even given everything you just talked about, it might make sense to take it at 62 as opposed to waiting?
Absolutely. And I will say, just to comment what you just said, everybody's situation is different. And I think one of the challenges we have, and part of the reason we do this podcast is I want people to see, like, I'm very accessible. And I think most certified financial planners are pretty accessible. And I want you to see that so people don't have like problems like picking up the phone and saying, I'm going to call and ask Dan this question because he obviously has education around this. Part of the reason people fall into this trap of like, well, I'm just going to take it at this age versus doing a personal analysis is because we have this fear of going and talking to people about money. It's just a natural fear. And so as we're working through this, keep in mind, I don't bite. Most certified financial planners don't bite. Most of us will sit down with you at no cost and give you some insight, right? And so as we're talking about this, keep in mind, you are an individual and your situation's unique. Getting back to your question, does it ever make sense to take it at 62? There are definitely times it makes sense to take it at 62. I mean, there could be an issue where there's a health issue where I'm not getting to 78 and I know I'm not getting to 78, right? So, or 80. So, I mean, unless something crazy changes, right? So like we need to take advantage of what benefits are there. I will say that a lot of people think I'm never going to live that long, but the numbers don't lie. Like I said, average life expectancy, 85 to 90 for someone that lives till 65. Just to throw that out there. So even though most people might not think they're going to live that long, there could be an immediate income need and no other resources. Like that's it. We don't have choices, right? So we don't have what we call bridge income available. So when you think of a financial plan, one of the things Brent and I in the office always try to illustrate to people is that, you know, you've got all these things. Think of it like you're at the store and you're at, you know, Meijer, Walmart, wherever, and you've got all these things on the shelf. Well, those are all resources to create income for you, like IRAs, Roth IRAs, like savings accounts, Social Security, pensions. And so when we talk about bridge income, it's like, okay, what other things do we have that maybe we could use that would allow you to push Social Security out later that improves your overall plan stability? Right. And so like not everybody has those things, but most people have some of them. So keep in mind, this is often putting a puzzle together to say, hey, how can I use all these resources and optimize my 3-lane highway for my family and get me the best long-term outcome? So keep that in mind as we talk about that stuff.
Well, let's go to the other end of the extreme, Dan. So there are, understandably, sometimes you don't have a choice and sometimes you need the money, and 62 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Are there other cases, or what kind of cases does it make sense to wait until you're 70?
Yeah, we run into it quite frequently, especially with couples, which we're going to get into in the next section and talk more about that. But yeah, being able to have typically one person if you're married, not necessarily both, but one person, the higher income earner, being able to wait till 70 can make a huge positive impact long-term on your plan, because it just creates a nice big number of guaranteed income, you know, that's coming in every month with the cost of living adjustment, which is really, you know, now you're talking about significant raises, you know, 3% on these bigger numbers at age 70. It's like, whoa, we're getting a nice bump every year.
Big difference.
Yeah. And if you have longevity and you're like, man, my mom and dad lived till almost 100, like I think I'm going to live a really long time, that can play into it. And really your other resources, because, you know, the thing to remember is like Social Security, each year you wait, you do get a pretty much a guaranteed bump in the amount they're going to give you, 7 to 8%. And so when you start thinking about that, they're like, okay, this resource is giving me that guaranteed bump. My portfolio has done all right, but now I'm investing a little more conservatively, and I'm not really confident I'm going to get 7 to 8% on that at my current risk level. So just doing simple math, you might be like, I think if I actually use some of my IRA first and then push that out, that may put me in a better long-term spot. And we talked about it last time with Roth conversions in our last episode. Keep in mind, this decision also affects taxes. And so sometimes when you're able to push out Social Security, it allows you to do more things like Roth conversions. It keeps your overall taxable income lower for longer. And so you can do some of these things that really has a big, big tax impact long-term that allows you to change your overall long-term outlook, not only for you, but for your family.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. As a matter of fact, and I just will point out, you know, with Social Security, you're guaranteed that 7 to 8% bump roughly every year, the longer each year you delay. Yeah, you might be doing really well with your investment accounts, but there is no investment account on the planet that's guaranteed to return anything, as a matter of fact.
And you know as well as I do, Bill, if somebody's like, oh, I've got a guaranteed investment at 7 or 8%, you better do a lot of due diligence.
Yes, absolutely. So you just implied it in that last answer, Dan, but this clearly, unless you live alone, unless you're a single person, the decision to take Social Security is a household decision because you're living with somebody, and that somebody may or may not be ready to collect or not. But there's two of you involved in the equation. How does that affect everything?
Yeah, 100%. It's very complicated. And so there's a lot of factors. There are emotional factors, there are health factors, there are just money factors, right? One thing just to like explain it, kind of a simplistic level. So keep this in mind. Generally speaking, we're not living forever. So let's just get that out of the way.
I know.
And so the way Social Security works, to simplify again, when one spouse passes away, the remaining spouse is generally going to get the higher benefit, right? So like, let's take that example where the higher income earner maximized their own benefit and waited till 70. Now they pass away, the remaining spouse that was getting a lower amount because maybe they took theirs as early as 62, because they're independent decisions. Maybe they took it at 67. Whenever they took it, theirs was lower. They're kind of going to lose theirs and they're going to gain the other. Now, technically, they get a spousal benefit, and it's more complicated than that. But I want to simplify it and just think, hey, I'm getting the higher of the two, right? That's kind of what I'm going to get. And so when you think about that, that can be a huge thing because it's funny. People that have been married a long time, they kind of think, oh, we'll just die at the same time. That'll be great, but that's not usually how it works. Yeah, that's not usually how it works.
Typically how it works, yeah.
And so maximizing it for your remaining spouse can be very beneficial, and it can actually really make your financial plan, your retirement income plan, much stronger. Because the thing is, what you have to remember, when a spouse dies, not only do you lose that one Social Security, you also change your tax bracket because you go from married to single. And so like the same amount of dollars that are coming in actually are worth less because you have higher taxes usually, right? So you got to think about that as well.
Cruel reality. A cruel reality. So what happens if someone is still working and they become eligible? And let's say they become eligible at their full retirement age, but they like working and they're continuing to work. What happens if they go ahead and claim?
Yeah.
Before they retire?
Yeah, we talked briefly about that. Right now, it's like $24,480 you can earn under, if you're below full retirement age. It's kind of complicated because there's just like everything with government and rules. But
no.
The year you turn full retirement age, so let's say your birthday was June 15th, right? Up until June 15th, the earnings limit's $65,160. Once you've reached your full retirement age, there are no earnings limits anymore. So like what that means is that what some people will do is they'll say, well, I'm not going to take it before that because I'm still making $50,000 a year. So I'm just going to wait. Because if you take it and you're over that, $24,480 before your full retirement age, you're going to have to give some of it back, but they are credited back later. Just so you know, it's not like they're taking it forever from you, but they are taking your current paycheck. And so when you start factoring that all in and you're like, well, if I wouldn't have taken it and say it's growing at 7 to 8%, generally with those income years, you'll find many times it's better just to wait until you get a little older where you don't have any reduction and you can still continue growing those benefits. But just be aware that's another rule. And again, it goes across all 3 lanes of the highway: investments, retirement and income planning, and taxes. You got to take them all into consideration when you're making these choices.
So, Dan, is there a risk in waiting too long to think through all of this stuff?
Well, the one thing I will say, generally speaking, your decision is permanent.
That's a big word.
Yeah. We had some cases where you can pay it back, and we actually had a few people do that where we caught it soon enough because they made a mistake. Because some of these things applied, they didn't realize. They're like, oh, I wouldn't have taken it if I would have known. Well, like, we've only had it 3 months. You can revoke it. You can do that one time, I believe. But anyway, But you have to pay those benefits back, right? You have to pay them back, right? You pay them back and it resets like you didn't take it. But keep in mind, think of it as irrevocable. Think of it as once I make that choice, it's locked in. And so you really want to think through it clearly. You want to make sure you've got good experts to help you make that choice. Because the thing is, I always tell people, the benefits of working with fiduciary there's many of them. This one is huge, and I'll explain why very, very succinctly. Most investment advisors today get paid on what's called an assets under management model, meaning they get paid based on the value of your account, right? And so Taking Social Security, let's say you get the advice to delay it. Generally, that means you need to take more out of your investment portfolio to make up that difference, right? To get you through to when you start Social Security, which means that your advisor actually is taking a little bit of a pay cut, right? Giving you that advice. Where if somebody wasn't a fiduciary, they may say, oh, just take it at 62, you're crazy to wait, because they don't want to see you taking extra money out of retirement accounts because it'll cut their pay. Well, a fiduciary is going to give you the best advice for you. And that's so important, regardless of the effect on them. And so when you run all these numbers, you want to work with someone that's going to give you advice that is going to truly put you in the best position and not do it based on how it's going to affect them. That makes sense?
That makes complete sense. And it's a really excellent reminder well, for me, it's a really excellent reminder why you should be dealing with certified financial planners and people with a fiduciary duty. And it is a duty, people listening to this. It is actually a legal obligation. So, okay. You've made the point. It is complicated. It's different from everybody for everybody. But there are a couple of things here that I want to clear up before we, wind up this podcast. One is that your 3-lane highway that you talk about a lot, and then and how does it affect that? And I often think, Dan, just in my own secret mind, I've never told you, there's a 4th lane, taxes.
Yeah.
How do all of these decisions relate, interact, and affect that 3-lane highway and any tax obligation or taxes you might have?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned in our last episode, we were talking about Roth conversions, how a good visual is to see if I do nothing, if I just stick to my plan. So let's say your plan was, I'm going to take it at 62, I'm going to do this and that. We can draw that out. We can see what your taxes look like based on that scenario, doing it that way. Then we can say, because honestly, it's amazing how great financial planning software is today. Like all this stuff we used to have to do on spreadsheets, it's amazing. It factors in taxes, all these different things. Then we can look at different claiming ages, right? And we can see, how does that affect my taxes? And then we can look at, what if we factor in the next level, maybe doing some Roth conversions and other advanced tax planning. And so let's do it with taking it early. Let's do it taking it at full retirement age, maybe age 70. And let's see how this all looks and how does that affect our long-term taxes? How does that affect our long-term portfolio, right? Here's a little dirty secret that a lot of people don't always think about. If all of a sudden I don't need as much out of my portfolio long-term because I maybe have higher Social Security, I can invest that maybe a little bit more aggressively because I don't need to set aside as much money for income, which means that long-term it gives not only you more security, but it grows more for your heirs, right?
Yep.
So all these things are affected by when you take it. And so I always tell people, we want to simplify and say, well, I'm just going to take it because of this. I highly recommend scenario planning, laying it out so you could see the true impact of how the decision affects all the other lanes of the highway as you're doing your planning.
Well, and it seems really clear that this is not a decision you should make in isolation, unless of course, you are single and living alone.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And one of the things that we've done is, we create what we call a 30-minute strategy call. And there's a lot of different areas that we talk about, but here's what we want everybody to get: clarity. And so this is not a sales call. This is a 30-minute strategy call. We can do it on Zoom in the office, whatever is comfortable for you. But what we'll do is we will sit with you at no cost for 30 minutes, get a high level of what resources you have available, and start giving you things to think about. Do you need to dig deeper? Is this way more complex than you maybe thought? And, so that you can make sure you get the information to make an educated choice. Because like I say, a lot of this is not easy to change. If you turn it on many times or most times, it's irrevocable, not going to be able to change it. So with decisions like that, get good information. Talk to a certified financial planner. Our offers will do 30-minute strategy. No sales whatsoever. We're not going to try to lure you in. It's literally education to help you figure out where you are and what might be the best next steps for you.
Yeah. And listeners, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, I want to tell you that I've been doing this podcast with Dan for some time now. And I can tell you, this is who he is. This isn't a persona he's adopted for the podcast. So if you're intrigued, if you're curious, do please reach out to him. And Dan, what is the best way for them to reach out to you and get a hold of you and schedule maybe a conversation?
Yeah, the best way, all our contact information, everything's on our website at averywealth.com. There's a contact us button. You can put in comments. We'll reach out to you. Our phone number's there. You can call our office, talk to Laurel up front. She'll get you on the calendar to do that 30-minute strategy call. Or if you just have a simple question, like, I don't really want a 30-minute, I literally just have a 5-minute question. We are here. We have other certified financial planners in the office. We will take your call. We will help answer your question to the best of our ability, and we will help direct you to the resources that make the most sense. But I highly recommend the 30-minute strategy call because it gives us enough time to make sure that we're getting the right information from you and giving you good advice. But this stuff's complicated, but don't let it scare you. We help people every day with this stuff, and having, someone that you can partner with to have these conversations and to really feel better about the decisions you're making is worth its weight in gold.
100%. If something is scaring you, the best thing you can do is sit down and talk with people who know something about it. Inform yourself. The other thing that you can do that costs you absolutely nothing, again, just like the complimentary 30-minute phone call or quick question, is hit the follow button on this podcast if you're not a subscriber already. Become a subscriber. That way, every time Dan drops a new episode, you can give it a listen. For example, if you were listening to the Roth conversation, the episode before this one, you've been notified if you already subscribed, and you probably have enjoyed this conversation on Social Security as well. Until next time, I'm Bill Tucker. On behalf of Dan and everybody at Avery Wealth Management, thanks so much for taking the time to listen today, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you for listening to Ramp Up Your Retirement. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.averywealth.com or give us a call at 517-783-1695. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Avery Wealth. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The opinions voiced in Ramp Up to Retirement with Dan Reese are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on the show may not be affiliated with CWM LLC. Views and comments by guests may not be representative of CWM LLC. Investment advisory services are offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors.